Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Trey Smith here, excited to do a video on the 5 biggest mistakes that we see game creators making, all right? So I'm CEO at a company called Buildbox. If you're not familiar with us, we have drag and drop game making software. We also have a game business that crossed 65 million downloads. We got a lot of experience here, and we've seen a lot of games over the last few years. So here's the 5 biggest mistakes. We see this stuff pop up over and over, and the first big mistake is making your character too big. All right, to show you guys why that's a huge mistake and you should never do it, I'm going to pull up a project in Buildbox. We're going to make the character too big. I'm going to show you how it affects the gameplay. All right, so this is Buildbox here. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create New, and this opens up what's called Creator. We can choose a preset. Now, that's not going to be a template. It's just going to change all of the settings in Buildbox to have a gameplay type that we can play around with. Now, I'm going to click down here and choose Impossible. This is going to be like the Impossible game. Also Geometry Dash, some of my really favorite games. And I actually made this preset, so this is one I know good enough to show you guys. All right, so here we have Buildbox, and if we go to the corner here, I can click on this play button, and that will open up preview. Now, this game is super simple right now. There is not much to it. It only has 2 levels, and it's going to be very repetitive. All these presets are just meant to help you get started creating a game. All right, now you can see the different levels down here. Just show you guys really quick so you understand what all I'm doing in the software. This is the start scene, which is the same as a level, and then we have level 1 right here, and that's all we have right now in this game. And this will be our starting point, and then you can see over here we have our character that we can play around with as well. All right, so that's the setup. Now let's dive in. I'll show you what's wrong with having a huge character. So right now we just have this single one character right here, and it's a white square. And as mentioned, we also have 2 scenes down here, and scenes are the same as levels. If we wanted to expand these scenes out, we could easily do so and have something a little bit more interesting and more difficult for the player to traverse through. All right, so we'll do that just to make it a little bit more interesting, and this will show you why characters being big is such a bad idea. And it's randomized, so we got to wait for that scene to pop up. There we go, and it is possible to get through there. Okay, cool. So now, why is it such a bad idea for you to have big characters? Well, first off, why do people do this? It's such a common mistake. It's probably the #1 mistake that we see in games. And if you actually take your character and you superimpose it on a popular game like Super Mario Brothers, you'll be shocked at how much smaller Super Mario Brothers, especially in the small form, is most likely than your character. And I think the reason that people make big characters is because they're proud of this character, they're excited about it, and they want people to really be able to see it, and they think it might make the game more fun to have a large character. But especially on the mobile app store, on the Apple App Store for iPhone, and then also on Android, you're going to see that a lot of these characters are really small. And my game Phases, which hit the top 25 of the App Store, I mean, that's a really small ball playing that game, okay? So now let's go back into the software here, and I'm going to show you what this game would be like with a big character. All right, we're going to go ahead and just simply make this character a little bit bigger here. There we go. All right, and this is about the size that we see a lot of people doing who don't know much about games. It takes up a large part of the screen. Okay, so obviously this is not going to work, but let's say even that was not an issue. Okay, let's go ahead and remove that and restart the game here. The problem is you just don't have as much to work with, right? You don't have much of an area. It's hard to clear jumps. It makes the game harder and less fun because the character is less nimble. Okay, also, if you're using an engine like Buildbox that has real physics, a larger character is going to carry more weight. All right, you're going to actually feel that. It's going to make the game feel a little bit more slowed down. And sure, we could go in and we could click here on character, and then we could go down on this side and change these settings and make the character a little bit more nimble, like maybe make his jump force a little bit higher. We can change that to 65, for example, but it's still not going to make the game feel right. There's still going to be something that's off with this game, even if we do that. And I'll show you. Now he is jumping a little bit higher, but the game is not going to feel right because the character's just too large, all right? You only have so much space. You want to have level design. You want to have great graphics. You want to have all this exciting stuff. You can see now he's not even falling in pits. It just doesn't work, all right? I would suggest that people, when they're first starting out, use really small characters, all right? And there's a game called Pixel that was, Doc Pixel actually, by a Buildbox customer. It was a really popular game published by Absolute, and they did an absolutely fantastic job, pun intended, using a small character in that game. But see, already, look how much more nimble this is, right? Now, think about how much more I can do from a level design perspective now with this as well, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and have some fun building out some really fast levels right here. And we have this small character. So we can actually start doing some cool stuff, like actually having secret tunnels, okay? It would be very difficult to do that, especially on mobile devices, if we had a very large character, right? That'd be very difficult. All right, so here we go. And there we go. Awesome. You know, that works pretty well. Let me see if I can zoom in here so you guys can see it really good. And you can see we can jump through there, and then it's about timing it right there. And we could make this even more fun. We could have a spike, a little mini spike. Again, since we are miniaturizing the game a bit, we could do this even more. And let's say this was a little bit taller like that. Okay, now let's see what this is going to be like. There we go. And so now we have to get more exact. And of course, if we wanted to, we could make it even more interesting by spreading this out a little bit more. Or I tell you what we're going to do. Let's revert that and have this up here. And let's just flip this guy around right there. So then we really have to get right in line there. There we go. And if you do use Buildbox, by the way, holding down Shift will keep the X coordinate the same, or the Y coordinate. That way you can kind of snap back into place, okay? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. And let's see what happens. Now we've got a difficult game, man. Now this is cool, okay? To really figure out how to go in there. But we're gonna talk about another problem in a second that we have to be careful of, and I think we might be getting to now, which is making a game too difficult. All right, there's definitely a balance there. You don't want to do one or the other. You don't want the game to be too hard or too difficult. We'll discuss that in a minute. Let me see if I can nail down this one to have it drop a little bit right there. And I think a good way of doing this is pulling this back, pulling this down. Let's try it this way. Okay, so I got room to fall. And oh, you know what though? You can't jump unless you are in the on the ground. So I'm going to show you how I can turn that off in Buildbox real quick. And this is actually pretty easy. We just click on the character over here. All right, and then if you look at the bottom right of the screen, you'll see that we're going to have jump from ground right here. I'm just going to turn that off. And then now let's see how it works. So we click start, we jump. Now we get, but you still only have a single jump, okay? So you still can't jump twice, and then there we go. All right, then we make it. Of course, now we're gonna, oh, look at that! All right, perfect. So how much more cool was that, right? The game's more nimble, it's more fun, it's more exciting. And that comes, I mean, it's so often that we see these big characters that slow down games. If you want a fun game, a small character leads to wider, more exciting game design. So that's the first big mistake we see. The second one's almost just as big, possibly even bigger though. And we see this a lot all the time, and that's making a game too slow. Let's go back into Buildbox and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so right now, if I click on this at the top left-hand side, right over here, this is gonna open up the game mind map. And you can see this is gonna show the start scene. And this is gonna be where you have your logo, then the main menu, and this is where you're gonna choose, you know, just start, or you can change some different options there. Then your game world. Now you notice when I clicked on game world, it has all these settings here. All right, well, all of these settings actually are the gravity and the environment and the physics of your game. And one of my favorite ones in here is called time warp. And what we can do is we can slow this down. We can turn this to 20, for example, and the game's gonna be super duper slow. So let's do that now. I'm gonna go ahead, make sure that's at 20. And now when I hit play, we're gonna be playing a very, very slow game, okay? So look at this, everything is moving super slow. Now something interesting is gonna happen here. The game, it's not necessarily easier, okay? So remember, this is a single jump game. We could change this, but you can't double jump. I'm clicking and I'm only jumping once, all right? So that means even right here, to be able to hit that and go in there, I have to time the fall. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Because there's not a double jump. So I have to time this fall coming right off and then going in there. And it's actually harder going this slow. So a lot of people think it's going to make their game easier, but it's hard to time stuff when it's this slow. Now, in everyone in the world's defense, I've never played a game, I don't think, this slow. And the truth is, you know what? Now that I'm doing this, it could be an interesting, but I mean, God, it would drive you crazy, right? But that's a little bit, I'll admit, of an extreme example, okay? But let me show you what I see a lot. Let me show you something that's not extreme at all. I see this kind of stuff happen a good bit. Again, we're gonna go to the right side. Time warp's one of my favorite things to do in games, and we're gonna do it instead at 40, okay? So I'm putting this at 40 now, and make sure I got that in there. There we go. All right, now I'm gonna hit play, and I'll zoom in here so you guys can see that. And now this is pretty slow. This is something I definitely see a lot. And it's interesting because this actually made the game possibly easier, but still it's just kind of hard to time stuff, you know? But I tell you what, it's definitely not as enjoyable. You know, it's just too slow moving. It's just going to make make it a little bit boring, to be honest with you. So here's the thing. Now we were originally, you guys will probably remember better than me. I think we were over here at 60. Let me try that again, and we'll see here. So I'll hit play, make sure that's centered for you. And yeah, there we go. This is what we were at, I believe, before. No, that might be a little bit faster, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. To me, this is even seeming a little bit more fun. So typically, most of these default, and the default I believe I did for this game as well, it's either 55 or 60, but a lot of these will go to 50, all right? And that's kind of the default for this. So let's go back over here, make sure you can see it. And there we go. So we're going to do 50 and center this again so you can see the game. Yeah, this feels about normal, like we would do a preset. And the presets are the starting points, you know? I mean, that's not where we expect anyone to end up who's creating a game with Buildbox. I actually got the idea for presets. If you haven't heard this story, I'll tell you, because it's kind of a fun one. So you might see the DJ stuff back here. So I DJ and produce house music, electronic music. Been doing that longer than the video game stuff, like 10, 15, God, I'm embarrassed to say how long at this point. But anyway, so I have synthesizers, love synthesizers. And when I buy a synthesizer, they'd have presets, okay? Now, a lot of people have thought these presets are like templates, but they're not, right? It just changes the settings of the software, just like a preset on a synthesizer changes all the settings so you can get a unique sound. Now, if you music producers are out there, any of you guys are music producers, you know this. If not, here's the big thing with presets. No one actually is supposed to be using these presets in their final songs. It's a starting point. You want a bass sound, then you get this preset. You tweak all the knobs on the synthesizer, 3 in the morning, you're sitting there kind of tweaking these knobs until you get that perfect sound. That's what the goal was in Buildbox, was the same thing. All right, so let's go back over here. Let's look one more time. Now let's ramp this up to 70. Let's make this a fast game, and let's see what happens. And look, this might be too fast, all right? We'll see. All right, so now, you know what? This might be a little bit too fast, but I tell you what, it's definitely more exciting. I mean, if you want to think about having these big characters, that's like having a slow game, right? I mean, those big characters slow it down. So you have these fast, nimble ones, and it really does make things more exciting. Now, if you sent this to a publisher, I'm not saying, like we work with Ketchup a lot, I'm not saying that they would sign a game this fast. I think that's actually probably a little bit too fast. So we're going to change that to 63. Oops, let me do 63 there. Okay, and let's go ahead and pop that back up. And let's see there. Now this, though, I do think is definitely doable. You know what? This is kind of a fun game, and I'll be honest with you guys. I've seen a lot of these impossible. Actually, I made this preset, at the launch of Buildbox, and it was after playing the Impossible game in Geometry Dash. But I haven't seen one that has a lot of caverns and stuff. I think that's a pretty cool idea. So Buildbox users out there, you might want to play around with that one. We'll see. By the time we're done, we'll see how good this game is, okay? All right, so that is number 2, all right? And that's an important one, making your game too slow. You don't want to make your game too slow. But here's another thing, all right? Let's go in here. Let's go back and let's talk about number 3, which is making your game too hard. That's a huge mistake, and we see that as well. It's on the opposite end of the slow. It's on the opposite end of the spectrum of making it too slow or the character too big, but it happens a lot, all right? So here's a great example of a game being too hard. So let's do this. Let's tweak this so it's literally, and for the Buildbox users out there, by the way, moving this is, we have this on each scene, so for this kind of reason, so you can see what it takes to get in there. All right, or how about this? Let's just really ramp this one up. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. On a personal level, I love hard games. They're really fun for me to do, but I don't think it's the best, especially if you're trying to get published or, you know, get a game that's really successful. So, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and make this one hard and have some fun with it. So let's see here, guys. I think we can add this for sure. And then, you know what we're going to do is the second you get out of this mess, all right, the second you do, you have to, you're going to have to jump. Now, let's see. We're going to have it just, and it's going to be really small, so it's hard to see, okay? Yeah, we're just really going to punish people for playing our game here, okay? All right, so we only got one scene, all right, so that's good. By the way, if you do have multiple scenes, you can hit the S button, and let me back out here so you can see it. You can hit the S button, and then that right there will solo a scene for you, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and delete these. We're only working with one scene, but just in case you didn't know that, you can do that as well, and it makes it a lot easier. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and bring back this preview. Let's zoom in a little bit. You know, it's interesting. I noticed my button's going dark anytime I go from this view, and I zoom in. Look at this. Zoom, dark button. You want to see that again? Let's do it one more time. Ready? Zoom, boom, dark button. It's weird. It's like some hotkey conflict. All right, so now you guys, listen, now you can sleep at night. You know about the hotkey conflict, okay? Learn that in history class. Okay, all right, so let's check this one out. So we're doing a little jump here, and oh, you know what happened? We had another hotkey conflict. This is the first video with the hotkeys, so you'll have to bear with me there. I accidentally turned some of this stuff when I did a hotkey there. So there we go. Make sure this is all normal. We got a fixed, not a physics. Yes, not velocity. It's not going to be moving. All right, now let's go ahead and confirm that it is in fact there, and it is not. All right, so what do we got here? We have something that is moving the object. We're going to do, there we go. Let's do a platform 0. Okay. Restart, and we should in fact see it there. Boom. Okay, cool. So where were we, ladies and gentlemen? I apologize for that. All right, so now you can see that this game is going to be way too hard. Actually, maybe it's not too hard. Oh, but this brings me to another point, okay? So it's not that hard, right? But listen, this is important. It's not that hard because I made the game. So I know exactly all the pixels I moved it on. I played with the time warp. I did all this stuff. This is a huge part of not making your game too hard. And I hate to tell you this, sometimes you don't need to make the game perfectly fun for you. When we get to the last point of this, we're going to talk about this more. But a lot of people do that. They're like, dude, this game is awesome. It's so much fun. But the problem is it's great for you, but you're like the grand, master of your game. You're like the main dude of your game, right? You know how to play it better than anyone. I say that, but whenever we release a game, there's people who get like a score and lines in of 1 billion, and I don't know how they do it. I think they might be hacking the scoreboard, but what are you going to do? But seriously, you got to be careful. Don't build the game solely at your level because you're obviously going to be better. And the best way of doing this is play testing. Play test it on your friends, your family, people you work with, the girl at the coffee shop, whoever. Just play test it on as many people as possible. Get their feedback. And the best way to play test on someone with your game is instead of asking them what they think, watch, all right? Just be real quiet and watch them play. See how long they play. Don't ask for the phone back. Pass it to them and let them just play the game. See how long they do it. Gauge their reactions. Look at their face. Get like this close to them and just like, really stare at them like that. No, you don't have to do that. They might throw you out of the coffee shop. All right, so where were we? All right, yeah, so this is too hard. There's no question that this game is too hard, even though I might be able to do it 50% of the time, unless it's the final level or something, but in general, this game is going to be too hard. All right, so that is the third thing you want to watch out for, okay? But the fourth biggest mistake is on the opposite end of the spectrum. That's making a game too easy, and it's just as big of an issue. We see it all the time. I'm going to show you a quick example of that. We see this a lot in conjunction with the large character. For some reason, these kind of flow together, probably because the character's so awkwardly large that it's kind of difficult to create any real game design around it. But, you know, this is a pretty self-explanatory one. I'll make it fast, though. What you do not want to do, guys, and you can see for the Buildbox users, they're like, you're not using 2.3 beta, because that has multiple select. But I will be very soon. All right, so now we're going to hit play here and start. We'll zoom in. And, of course, I just died, but I just realized something. I think I made this impossible. There we go. Now, this would be a game, and we see this kind of stuff a lot, right? A game that's just way too easy, okay? I mean, look at that. You can't even fall down the pit, all right? This is definitely too easy. So you want, it is definitely, no question, a fine balancing act, okay? You don't want to make your game too hard, but on the other, you know, other side of the fence, if the game's too easy, then obviously no one's going to play it. And even if it's easier than this, right? Even if we do have some things in here for the person to avoid, it still has to have some challenge to be fun, okay? So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and extend this out just a little bit right here. There we go. All right. And let's do that one more time so I can give you at least an example. And that's actually, you know, that's actually, it's kind of, you know what's funny is I never use characters this big, so it's hard to immediately balance and figure out where things should go. I can do it more in a small one. There we go. That's a good example. A good example. That's just, yeah, way too easy right there. All right, so now we're down to number 5, the last and final mistake that we see people do. And this is a real big one if you're taking it serious. If you're trying to get publishers, if you're trying to really create like a hit game in the App Store and get in the top 10, then this is one you got to really pay attention to. And that is not having your game polished enough, okay? This is a huge one. Let me give you some really easy examples that you can look for in your game. I know a lot of you have heard me talk about this who are Buildbox fans over the years, and you're probably like, man, what does that mean? All right, so I'm going to give you some specifics here, okay? So one good example is, let's zoom in right here, and we have these two objects, okay? These two objects should be absolutely the exact same size, not a millimeter off. Now I'm going to grab an object out here. I'm going to grab this enemy just to show you. And I do this a lot when I'm creating games, okay? And you can see that one's just a little bit off. Here, we'll zoom in a little bit so you can see. You know, it's just a teeny bit off, okay? They got to be dead on. Now, if you're using Buildbox, and most software has a feature like this, I would hope, then what you can do is choose Snap, okay? We go right up here. You can see right here, we have Snap right there. It's a magnet. And when that is turned on, then now these are going to snap to a grid, all right? And it's actually every, I think it's 5 or 10 pixels. I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember, even though I think I came up with that. I still have no clue. But anyway, it's one of those. And then look at this. It's going to be a perfect match, right? This is even snapping right here as well. And you'll need to turn that off and on as needed. But that's one thing. Another really big mistake is when people, let me zoom in here so you can see it, when they're cloning and then they have something just a little bit higher. That right there drives me nuts, okay? Now, it's obviously pretty easy to do it here. All right, you can clone it. And as mentioned, if you hold down Shift, it will actually automatically stay perfectly on that X-axis if you're using Buildbox, okay? But here's where it gets really to be a pain. And I dealt with this probably more than anyone in the world when I was making the game phases, okay? So, all right, here's the issue. Let's say I've got these two right here, and I've got a game, and I want to have these match up right here in the middle, okay? Well, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be right in there. But see that little smidge right there? What I do is I go out, and you can actually go up here to View, and then do Actual Size. And if I can't see it on Actual Size, all right, then I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it, even a little zoomed in. But I'm a real stickler. And the guys who get published, the guys who are getting deals and stuff like that, they're sticklers as well. We see a lot of people with stuff like this, okay? And you can barely see it, but you can just a little bit. And it doesn't come across well. One thing to remember, unless you have a Retina screen, when you're creating games, most mobile devices are Retina. So you want to make sure that it's pretty much pixel perfect, because if it's a little bit off, you might not see it because of the blur, but on a device, you definitely will see it. All right, so other parts of polishing. We recently had a live event where we talked about cloning and making the game load faster, and I'm going to show something here for Buildbox, but it's called instancing. All right, now if we go up to the very top up here, and we choose tools, you'll see that we have convert to clones and convert to global clones. Now, what the heck is a clone and why does it matter for polishing? All right, so let me explain why this matters. So this is our start scene. And as you can see right here, we just have one enemy on this start scene. That's it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it behind the platform. That way we don't have it sticking out there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my character here, and I'm going to make clones and duplicates of this. I'm going to press the D button on my keyboard, and I'm going to duplicate this a few different times, okay? Now, obviously, this is going to be impossible to play. This is just to give you an example. Okay, so if I go into debug mode, and that's easy to do, you just go up here, and you click on this debug mode button right here. It's right up there in the corner. And then you can see all of these are red. Each of these enemies is red. And when I click on each enemy, we're going to have different information over here. We can change that information if we want. Let me pull this up so you can see. So I click on this one, I could have a linear velocity of 20. And if I click on this one, I could say, you know what, I want to move it 10. Now what that does is that would move it to the right at a speed of 10. If I said, this one, I want to move it backwards at a speed of 5, then I would do -5. And this one, and we hit play. This one's going to move forward. This one's going to move forward as well. And this one's going to go backwards, okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. When you have objects like this that you've duplicated, you have to actually write all this information over here to the BB doc, to your save file. Okay, now this is more advanced. Polishing a game is more advanced, and that's an important thing to go over real quick. If you're like, what are you talking about? Well, this is the last one, and it is the most advanced one. This is for people who are making a professional game and they want to get it signed. This is about managing your assets and making sure your file size is not enormous when you submit your game to a publisher or upload it yourself to the App Store, okay? So here's why this is important. Once again, let me zoom back in over here. So this means you have to write all this information down inside of a Buildbox save file, and eventually when you export your game and upload it to an iPhone or Android, it means all this information is written down multiple times. Well, if it's the exact same, for example, this one's the exact same as this one, all right? Then, if it's the exact same, then you can convert it to a clone. So what I'm going to do is go back up here to the top, and I'm going to do Tools, Convert to Clones. And when we go back over here and pull up, you're going to see now some are green, all right? And the ones that are green here, these are the ones that are now clones. You notice we don't have any information here. So that's going to make the file size in a BB doc a lot smaller, especially if you go up to the top and then you do global. And you'd only do this when you're finalizing a game, okay? And if you do this, then everything inside of your game is going to be, find all the clones throughout all your different levels, and then it will make sure that it gets rid of any unnecessary data. You'd only want to do this at the last step. In Buildbox 3, we're actually going to make it so this happens automatically. It's not something that you'll even have to think about. But it's good. It's an interesting thing to know, especially from the coding side, is what people would do. So I think it's important to understand some of the functionality and basics in game design when you're creating games, even if you're using software like ours that doesn't require you to code. All right, so that's part of the polishing process. And when you remove all that unused data, your game's going to load faster. And that is a huge dramatic thing. If your game loads slow, people will just simply hit the home button and move on. So you don't want your game to load slow. You want all your images to align up. And what you really want to do is when you are playing your game, if you notice even the tiniest thing wrong, then you've got to fix it. Because the truth is, if you're playing your game, you probably notice some things wrong. If you have so many things wrong that it's overwhelming, then you might not be able to pick out specifics. It's just like, oh my God, and I got it. I was like that when I first started too. But if you get good and you keep practicing, you keep comparing yourself to the best people out there, and you start noticing little bitty things that just aren't perfect in your game, that are perfect in the games published by people like Ketchup and Nanovation, and when you play Color Switch and all these games, and you're like, wow, you know, these are really perfect, but I noticed mine has this one little issue. That's because your game is not completely polished, and that's what you need to focus on. All right, so I think we've gone over a lot of stuff, right? This is the 5 biggest things. Character is too big, game is too slow, game is too hard, game is too easy, and it's not polished enough. And if you can do all that stuff, then you're going to be good to go. So if you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe. And we'll definitely have a lot more like this from myself and other people here at Buildbox. We love making games. We love sharing this stuff with you. So we'd love to talk more about it. And if you have a game that you've created, then please share it in the comments. And if you learned anything and maybe you think that your character is too big in your game, we'd like to hear that too. All right, thanks a lot. Trey Smith with Buildbox. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.